Episode 5, Ocean Advocate, Emily Penn.
Welcome to Thriving with Nature, a podcast that gives you the tools you need to live a modern lifestyle that helps regenerate our planet. And now your host, Hayley Weatherburn.
Hello, Thrivers. Welcome to Thriving with Nature podcast. We have a very special guest today, Emily Penn. Welcome.
Good morning.
I want to introduce you to Emily. Emily is a skipper and an ocean advocate dedicated to studying environmental challenges in the most remote parts of our planet, and definitely remote. She is an international speaker and advisor on issues relating to our oceans and future society. And I first met Emily here in Bali in 2016 when she spoke at TEDx and poignantly connected the issue of ocean plastic back to human health and how we urgently need to shift our behaviours on some fundamental levels. And it was such an amazing, phenomenal speech there at TEDx that it really it enlightened something inside of me. And I even went up to you after the talk and just probably babbled on. But welcome, Emily. Thank you so much for sharing your time. I know you're a busy woman. And so thank you for sharing your time here with us, with the Thrivers from Thriving with Nature.
Oh, it's great to be here.
So can you share a little bit about what inspired you to become an ocean advocate?
So I guess a lifetime of growing up close to the water probably planted something in my mind. But that was in the UK, having kind of holidays in Devon, sailing, snorkeling. And then it wasn't until I was 21, I had graduated with a degree in architecture. And I lined up my first job in Australia.
Oh, go Australia.
Yeah. And I started looking between England and Australia, and I really wanted to get there without taking an aeroplane. I didn't want to miss everything in between. And so I looked at ways to hitchhike on boats, sailboats, and all sorts of options. I ended up actually being involved with a project called Earth Race, which was a crazy looking boat.
Yes, look that up.
Yeah, held the round the world speed record, still does actually, running on biofuel. And ended up joining this boat as my way to get to Australia. But what I wasn't expecting was to cross the Pacific Ocean and find myself surrounded in plastic in the most remote parts of our planet. So stopping at small islands and finding uninhabited atolls that were covered in plastic debris, local communities that were struggling with the amount of plastic they were ending up producing because they were relying on that plastic for their food and drink. And then even in the very middle of the ocean, so we didn't have any running water on board. Every morning we had to jump in for a swim as our way of having a bit of a wash. And it was those morning swims every morning when I jumped off the boat and I started to see these fragments of plastic or a toothbrush literally 800 miles from nearest land.
Wow.
It didn't make any sense.
No.
And so that was the moment when I thought, I need to do something about it. But it took years after that to then work out really what that thing was and turn out figure out how to turn that into a career.
Yeah, and so since then, I've gone on. If anyone really is interested in this area, I definitely recommend going and watching YouTube. Emily's got some amazing talks there. After that, you wanted to go and study a bit more out in the ocean with women. You've created sort of expeditions or something. Do you want to explain a bit about what you're doing to find more of that, like to get more of that scientific knowledge of what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So the more time I spent on these little islands, I realized that so much plastic was washing up and it was traveling thousands of miles across the ocean. And that's when I came across the idea of these gyres or accumulation zones, which are these areas in the ocean due to the currents.
The plastic patches or the garbage patches, they call them?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what they've become known. So the sort of scientific word we call is a gyre. And also in weather, you might have heard of the high, the center of a high.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same kind of phenomenon that creates that like really calm weather. And the reason the plastic ends up there is because it's really calm. So it moves away from the fast moving currents into those calm patches.
Okay, interesting.
So, I was aware of this idea, and there were computer models and scientific papers that talked about it. But the reality was no one had ever actually been out there other than the North Pacific, but no one had been to these other 4 suspected gyres to find out if there was any plastic there and how much plastic and what impact it was having. And so all of these questions basically popped up. And so I started to put together a project to go out there and to do that first kind of global study of research on these gyres. And so we set off in 2010 for a 2-year mission to go and kind of find out. And of course, we found a lot of plastic. We found a lot of other things as well. I think most of all, the realization that actually these patches, they aren't islands. They're not these big, physical, vast areas of plastic that you can see from space or that you could easily clean up. And the reality is that it's a soup of microplastic.
Wow.
Tiny fragments, smaller than your little fingernail, that you can't see when you look at the water. But that first global study showed us that there were over 5 trillion pieces floating on the surface of the ocean.
That's insane.
So that was that realization of kind of, it was a totally different problem than I first went out looking for. And then led to really the understanding that it's getting into the food chain. Yeah,
well, that's something that you show in some of your talks about how you actually went and got a blood test and started to notice the health, our human health, and how it's affecting us. Can you share a bit about on that?
Yeah, exactly. So I had a blood test for the pollutants that are either used in the production of plastic. Things like phthalates make plastic more flexible, and brominated compounds make it flame retardant.
Right.
Fluorinated compounds make our like Gore-Tex jackets that we wear at sea, make them waterproof.
Right, yeah.
And so there are lots of chemicals that we use in the production and use of plastic. But when they get into the marine environment, they're a pollutant and they're persistent. They never go away. And what we were realizing is that they were in the sea, in the fish. And so I then went to do a blood test to see if they also might be in my body. And it turned out, of these 35 chemicals that we tested for, that have all been banned by the United Nations because they're toxic to humans, we found 29 of them in my blood.
That's just insane, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's totally not what I was expecting.
No.
I grew up kind of, eating vegetables from the back garden. I was that kind of geeky kid at school that had to show up at birthday parties with a bunch of rhubarb instead of a box of chocolates, and figured that I'd had like a pretty healthy upbringing.
Yeah.
And then realizing that actually, we all have this chemical footprint that is just a product of eating and drinking and being human on planet Earth today.
It's really, this is where it hits home, is the fact that, you can see the pictures of the garbage patches and they're so far away, and we can get a little bit numbed by those things. But when we realize that this is affecting us, it's affecting, we are nature, as people know, thriving with nature. I believe that we're all one. But it really, really gets you when you realize that this plastic that you've got. And so I guess that's something I was watching recently of yours of, is it plastics from toothbrushes? I think you mentioned even clothes. Well, you just mentioned the gauze. Like, do we know what is the majority of the plastic out there, or?
So that's actually exactly what Expedition around the world at the moment is trying to figure out. And the research up until this point has been reasonably basic, but also it's stuff that we didn't know. We were trying to find out how much and where. And that threw open all kinds of interesting, unexpected results. The biggest one being, we know that 8 million tons of plastic is going into the ocean every year.
That's insane.
But we were only accounting for 250,000 of that floating on the surface. So it's kind of shown us that most of it's likely sinking.
Wow.
To places so deep that we haven't really yet measured, or that it's breaking up so small that it's been going through our 1/3 of a millimeter wide net. So now we're looking down to 5 microns, which is a lot smaller than we have before. So that's kind of the research to date. But this next piece of research is trying to do exactly what you're asking, which is trying to work out of that plastic out there. So we have on board an FTIR machine at the moment, which allows us to work out the polymer type.
Right. Okay.
So is it PET that's potentially come from packaging? Is it a piece of tire dust that might have come from our cars? And then in the sea from that? Is it fibers that have come from our clothes when we put them in the washing machine? Is it a pre-production pellet that hasn't even got into the hands of a consumer yet? And the truth is, we actually don't know. And hence, I mean, there's a lot that we still don't know. Even, those chemicals that I looked at in my body, we know they're used in the production of plastic, but we still don't know if they're getting into our bodies through them being in the environment, or more likely, are they just getting into our bodies through direct contact?
Holding them and using them. We still don't know.
Sleeping on a pillow that's got flame retardant chemicals on it all your life. It's more likely those. So that's just something, important to point out. We don't really know the impact that plastic in the ocean might have on our health. I was really skipping to the end of the chain just to try and find out, is there a concern for us? And the answer I found was yes. The question, how are those chemicals getting there? We really don't know.
So we're really in a dire situation. I mean, you've been doing this now for more than 10 years. What's the impact on the ocean that you're seeing? Is it like the animals? Like what is, like, how bad is it?
So I find it pretty horrendous when you look out and it actually looks like a blue ocean, and then you pull up the trawl and you realize there's hundreds of pieces of plastic in it, and the plastic's so small and it's the same size as the organic matter that you realize trying to extract it and keep the organic matter alive is really the kind of biggest challenge. So in one way, I kind of have, I guess, quite a negative message that I feel like we can't clean up what we've done. But on the other hand, the 2 positive messages are, one, we can totally stop this getting any worse. Literally the solutions are on our doorstep. All we need to do is prevent plastic from getting into the ocean. And then the second part of that message is the ocean is so resilient. And the other work that we've done at sea beyond plastic, so we've done work with coral reefs, looking at ocean acidification, rising sea levels, rising sea temperatures. And time again, we see these amazing examples of where if you leave the ocean alone, it fixes itself.
Yeah, well, that's much on land as well in nature. If we just walk away, it eventually comes back to itself. So I just wanted
to dire. I just want to make that.
We'll definitely come to that. I wanted, before this ends, I want to actually talk about, what are the practical things that the Thrivers can do out there. But I wanted to talk about something you mentioned in Tonga. You went to Tonga. That was one of the islands you went to on your spaceship, Earth Race. Earth Race. It looks like a spaceship on the ocean. It's amazing. So you should Google it if you're listening. You mentioned that there were 3 areas that happened, things that you noticed, that the Tongans weren't able to fish anymore because the commercial boats were trawling and taking all the fish. So they couldn't fish. The soil was becoming salty, so they couldn't even grow their own foods due to, I think you said, the rising oceans. And thirdly, what that ultimately ended up them doing is forcing them to order in imported plastic and tins and things that had these food inside it. We've almost forced these islands to join the problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then they have no system in place to deal with all of that waste that they're bringing in. And then the impact it has on their economy is huge as well, because they're then having to exploit their natural resources to find the money to buy the products. And it's a downward spiral.
Downward, yeah. I think my favorite thing that you said, that Tongans, when you first went there and you did an amazing situation where you helped them clean up a whole lot of rubbish and plastic, but you said there was no word for rubbish or waste in the Tongan language.
Exactly. And that was the moment when I realized that it wasn't just infrastructure that these communities needed, but a new way of thinking about this completely new inorganic material.
Yeah.
I went and did a cleanup the first day I got there with a bunch of kids, just a tiny one on a beach. And we all went out and started picking up all of the plastic. And the kids came back with the palm fronds and the coconut husks and everything. So to them, they thought we were cleaning up to kind of just make it look different. But there was no distinction between organic and inorganic material.
Yeah. Well, I find that here in Bali as well, because for hundreds of years they've eaten out of a banana leaf and then just thrown it on the ground, because then it ends up biodegrading. And what's happened is plastic has infiltrated the system here in Bali, and they still do it. They'll throw it down and they'll burn it because they would have burnt some rubbish, but it doesn't burn. It ends up putting toxins, and then it rains. We just had a massive rainy season, and I posted some things on just recently on my Instagram in regards to, we had 24 hours of rain, and I was on the beach the next day, and there were millions of plastic nappies, lots of single-use plastic. It was just insane, the amount of rubbish. And they just don't realize. They haven't made that connection yet, I don't think.
No, exactly. And it's sort of like, why would you think any differently about it? You know, if it's something that's kind of so new.
Well, if we can go back to, this is, the whole point of thriving with nature. If we come back and align ourselves with nature and create, we have this modern lifestyle, but it's aligned with that theory that everything that is waste, I'm doing rabbit ears for those who are listening on the podcast, everything that's waste should actually be beneficial or regenerative to another part of the ecosystem. Like litter off a tree ends up feeding the microorganisms that end up feeding the tree as well. Like if us humans can close off this loop of the plastic and create new ways of making things so that loop is no longer there, and then, clean up what we've done. Is that sort of what you see?
Exactly. Nature lives in circles. Everything is that closed loop. And at the moment, we humans are living in this real linear way. We take oil from the ground, we turn it into things, whether it's fuel or plastic, we use it, and then we let that go as waste, whether it's carbon dioxide in the atmosphere or plastic that ends up in the ocean or landfill. And those processes are so linear that it's not sustainable. We can't just keep doing that forever and ever, because we're going to run out of resource and we're going to clog our planet up with waste.
That's it. We can't have any waste. Two things. I think you mentioned that only 10% of plastic can actually be recycled.
Yeah, so the global statistic at the moment is 9%.
It's gone down. Wow.
Not that can be recycled, but that is recycled.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so 9% is recycled. Technically, anything can be recycled, but there's not a system for it.
Right.
And then when we go and do things like stick different types of materials together, like a toothbrush actually has 3 or 4 different types of plastic, the bristles, the main kind of handle, the grit are all different plastics. And that's what then makes it non-recyclable.
Because it's challenging to pull it apart.
Yeah, exactly, because it's all glued together and you've got to pull it apart. So, technically each of the bits of those plastic could be recycled, but of course we don't, because there's no value in it. And also if you have hundreds of different types of plastic, just the sorting process and the different streams of machinery, it's madness.
Where we're saving time now on creating these plastics, it's actually, I like to know systems. And if you think you're saving time here, look at the other end of the seesaw. that's where the time is going to have to be got back.
Exactly. And everyone says it's more convenient. We use plastic because it's convenient. And then I find myself standing on a Pacific island with 56 tons of waste and no landfill and no way to get rid of it. And I think I literally couldn't imagine a less convenient situation right now.
So
it's
true.
so inconvenient. And yet it's all been done for convenience.
Yeah.
And it's this payback. It's convenient now, and you're going to pay for it later.
Exactly. You can't escape that that it's like black and white. You just cannot escape it. And that's something I think, if you're listening, is to really take that away. Where you think you're saving time, where you think you're I'm just going to grab it because it's easy, know that there's a consequence to that, and it will come back, like almost like karma. And the human race is paying karmically right now for I don't blame us. We're all, human race is growing up, and we didn't know what we didn't know, but we know now. We have no excuses.
That's so true. It's the same approach I have with big companies. It's very easy to say, to kind of demonize these big companies. But I also, at the moment have that approach. It's like a lot of these chemicals, were invented for really great reasons. They've saved lives. They've, had amazing medical applications. They've completely transformed the quality of our lives. No one sort of set out to try and kill people. It was done with the best of intentions, but now we know.
Yeah.
And it's a saying, now that we know, we need to react, and we need to shift, and we need to actually take things in a different direction. And we're in that window at the moment.
Exactly. The next 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And now we need this great innovation, and we need big businesses working with us to do that great innovation, so that we have the solutions available to take us in a different direction.
Yeah, I feel that if companies now, that it becomes a law or how it works out, that if you are a product creator, that it doesn't end at the product. You must finish, that it is a cycle, that what happens at the end of the life of your product that you're creating, the product creation has to complete the whole circle when you're creating. And I think that's where we have to move towards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I also had a question. I'm currently studying soil advocacy. So soil advocacy, ocean advocacy, with Kiss the Ground. It's an amazing course. And we're all talking about regenerative agriculture, helping carbon, because right now we have an insane amount of carbon. We all know climate change. We hear about the climate change situation, and that there's an excess of carbon from fossil fuels, and a lot of it from agriculture, the conventional agriculture, from monocropping. We've only got 60 years left of topsoil that we can grow in, which is a UN statistic. Now, something that I've learned recently is that because of the insane amount of carbon, what the ocean does, because it's so amazing and beautiful, is it ends up trying to suck that carbon to help keep an equilibrium, a balance to keep the planet going. And what that causes is acidification, right?
Yeah, perfect.
So I'm wondering, what have you witnessed? You've been out there on the ocean. Have you seen any evidence of this acidification?
Yeah, so this is something that we were studying around the coral reefs. So yeah, basically that carbon dioxide is getting absorbed into the ocean, and the ocean has an amazing ability. I mean, the amount of carbon that it's absorbed since the Industrial Revolution is just terrifying. But it has consequences. That turns into carbonic acid. It lowers the pH of the water, and that has a huge impact on everything that lives in the ocean, particularly species that have like a sort of shell in them, because it almost dissolves essentially. That shell, so it has a big impact on mollusks and that sort of thing. But it has other impacts. It affects how sound travels underwater, so for whales and dolphins, who rely on that. Yeah, so a lot of kind of unseen impacts too. But yeah, mostly the way we saw it was how it was impacting the corals. And actually, the particular piece of research we were doing was we were going to very remote atolls in the South Pacific, and trying to understand why there were some corals there that had survived that hadn't everywhere else. Because of the acidification. And it turned out it was due to having cool, nutrient-rich water that was upwelling on one side of these islands.
Right. Wow. That was just maintaining it and sort of keeping the carbon.
It was way. Exactly. Well, it was basically, although there was one pressure on the coral, it was reducing the other pressures, which are lack of nutrients and too high temperature. But yeah, we certainly now seeing that impact globally, and also you then start to get these kind of positive feedback loops, which aren't a good thing, in that the more carbon that is absorbed by the ocean, it impacts those exact species that absorb the carbon, so the worse it gets, the worse it gets.
Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow.
And once you start going on those cycles, it's very hard to then recover from them.
Well, yeah, I will talk more of this later in other episodes, but there is switching from conventional to regenerative agriculture immediately starts sucking the carbon back in, which then relieves that pressure and can ultimately reverse the acidification in the ocean as well. So solutions. Let's give people hope.
Yes.
How can we turn off the tap and plastic? Like, what in the 10 years, what are maybe 1, 2, 3 things, or what you think is the most important that every one of us listening, every human can do to help this issue?
So the easiest thing we can all do is think about our own consumption of single-use plastic.
Yeah.
So it's those everyday items, the bags, the water bottles, the coffee cups, the disposable cutlery, the lunch packaging. It's all those things that actually we can get through life easily without. And it's scary how many of those items we find in the ocean and on beaches. So single use, if it's in your life for half a day or less, you really can do without it.
Yeah.
Even, if it's in your life for weeks, you can do without it as well. But certainly those bits that we only use for a moment, and yet that plastic lasts forever.
Yeah. These days, I was going to say, I have a bamboo set, a knife, fork and spoon that I carry in my handbag with me everywhere.
Exactly. There's loads of beautiful solutions out there, really lovely coffee cups. I so much prefer drinking out of my coffee cup than some crappy disposable thing. It's also really nice to use, because plastic is cheap and, that doesn't kind of feel as good. So make the switch.
Like now, like immediately, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Google online, find your favorite, brand. There's so many beautiful products out there to choose from. So that's something we can all do overnight.
Awesome.
And then beyond that, it's no simple answer. And very much kind of my philosophy with this whole topic is that there's no silver bullet solution for solving the issue. There's no great cleanup solution. And there's also not one prevention solution. But there are hundreds. And that's the good news, is that, whatever sector you work in, whatever skill set you have, at Expedition, we talk about superpowers, the fact that we all are brilliant and unique at something. And whether that's, you're a great chemist, or you're a great teacher, or you work in policy, or you're an engineer, or you work in industry, you're a designer, you're just really great at making cool little Instagram videos that people like to watch. Whatever it is that you're good at, where does that intersect the issue of plastic? And is it coming up with a new biodegradable material that's going to completely change things? Is it working on policy, in your local council, and where you live? Is it teaching others to sort of think about this as well, or shifting their mindsets? Is it rallying your community together to sort of prevent that flow? There's literally hundreds of things that we can do. And really, I believe what it's going to take is all of those things.
Exactly.
And one answer isn't better than another. We've just got to pick the thing that works for us and get started.
Yeah. Together we're better, right?
Exactly. And we need the approach from every angle. And so once you've reduced your own single-use plastic, I then would ask you, what's your superpower? What's your sphere of influence? It's the household that you run, the school that your kids go to, the community that you live in, or the company that you work for. And then, thinking about taking that to the next level, where do you have influence? Where do you have an opportunity to create change? And then working out, how do you turn that into something amazing?
Yeah, that's
what we're getting our tribe of women from around the world to ask themselves every day. We had a doctor on board the boat on the last leg, and she's now looking at how you can reduce single-use plastic in hospitals.
Oh, amazing.
And that's her piece. And we all need a piece. And if we all go for it like that, and then collaborate, share ideas, work together, keep connected, I really think we can solve it.
I really do believe that. I believe in the next 10 years is the window. That's it. We've got 10 years to change the behaviours of 7 billion people, and each of us can do our own part. And I love how you say that, the superpower. Find what you're passionate about and how that can align with nature. How can we bring ourselves back to nature in whatever industry you're in? Because I was going to ask, how can viewers at home influence companies, but it's like, maybe that's not your superpower, maybe something else is, or maybe it is. So I love that. Play
to your strengths.
Tell us a bit about, so it's called Round the World, is it? Because I know you've had expeditions for a few years now, but this sounds like something even more epic. You had like 10,000 women apply for.
So this is really the scaling up. We started X Expedition in 2014, sailing across the North Atlantic, and we've done a few voyages in different parts of the world each year since. But off the back of the North Pacific Expedition in 2018, we just had so many women write to us saying, I want to be involved in whatever's next, that we thought, wow, we really need to scale this to another level. So in October, we set off for X Expedition around the world.
Wow.
And so it's 30 voyage legs over 2 years, sailing to 4 of the Gyres, the accumulation zones, and the Arctic.
Wow.
And on every leg, we have 10 women join us as guest crew from different nationalities and different skills and backgrounds to do scientific research that I talked about earlier, really understanding what plastic is there, therefore where's our opportunity on land to prevent it, and also storytelling, getting up more eyes on this remote part of our planet. But then really the legacy is the women. These 300 women that are going to come back home to their communities with a kind of experience, story to tell, having really understood the problem, seen it firsthand, and most importantly, understood the role that they can now play in solving it.
Yeah, a ripple effect, but using their superpower, like you said.
Exactly. Because I really do think it's going to take an army of people to do this.
It is. I want to find a really good word for army, like warriors, but peaceers. I don't know.
I completely agree. I know. I keep using the word army, but it does have other connotations. But kind of that's
true.
That's
exactly.
We need a tribe, we need a community, but we need one that's got a bit of oomph.
On a mission, definitely. Yeah. Exactly. So how can viewers, if they want to get in contact with you, or have you got things how do people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so there's the Expedition website. That's EXX, representing the women. Pedition.
Is that the chromosomes or something?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I was wondering what the XX was. How fantastic.
So website, social media, follow along. There's still some spaces left for the last section of the voyage in 2021. As you say, we have had a lot of applicants, but we're sort of allocating places in phases. So everything's still up for grabs.
Oh, that's amazing.
Until the end. So definitely check that out. There's also my website and social media channels that are Emily Penn with 2 N's, to see the other projects that I've got going on. One of which is actually based here in London. We're running monthly events called Shift Sessions.
Oh, I saw something about that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this sort of started actually with a group of friends in a park about 6 years ago, when I was kind of struggling just to kind of keep in touch with the ocean community while spending most of my time at sea. So I'd come back to London and just gather everyone in one place. And it grew and grew to become London Ocean Drinks. And what we've done in the last year is, rather than just this quarterly networking event, which we still do, we've introduced panels, speakers, workshops, really as a way to kind of delve deeper into different aspects of these issues. Because, even our half-hour conversation here, could spin off in so many directions.
I know, right?
The panel that we had on Monday was actually looking at microfibers.
Wow.
And we had 6 people on the panel who are all coming up with different ways to solve this problem.
That's awesome.
Using their superpowers, their different approaches to fixing it. And so, really just unpacking these issues in a way that we can all really understand, figure out how to kind of harness this energy and work together. So there's a great community growing in London.
That's awesome. How could someone get involved with the Shift?
Yeah, so if you head over to my website, /shift, that's got all the upcoming events.
Fantastic.
You can, sign up on Eventbrite.
That's so exciting. I'm just so grateful for you sharing your wisdom and knowledge. And it's so, I remember actually when I first watched you at TEDx, I thought, I'd love to do that, but I'm terrified of the ocean. I have a deep respect for the ocean. I'm very much a land baby. But for those of you who are out there who this is really calling, this looks like one of the most amazing, life-changing expeditions. If you can get onto one of those end trips, I think it would just be fantastic.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I really want to thank you so much for your time. I think, as dire as the situation, there is hope. And I think with all of us using our superpowers, we can shift this quite dramatically in the next 5-10 years. So together we're better. And maybe one day there will be no use for the word rubbish in the English language.
Yes. Great point.
I think that would be fantastic. We could have rubbish in the museums and tell our great-great-grandchildren how stupid we once were.
Yeah. That is a great goal.
Yes, I think it is.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time, Emily. So head over to Emily Penn with 2 N's.com, right?
.co.uk.
.co.uk.
I think both work. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
If you want to find out more. And Thrivers, thank you so much for listening. I'm just so excited by what we can all do together. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, if you enjoyed listening to my podcast, remember to subscribe to hear more. You also have to come check out the Thriving with Nature website, where all of my videos, podcasts, and resources are to take what we discuss here to the next level and apply it in real life. I'd love to have you come join myself and many others striving towards living a regenerative lifestyle. Go to thrivingwithnature.com.